Aurora City Council for Monday, June 23rd, 2025 is called to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Kaufman,
Here.
Councilmember Bergen,
Here.
Councilmember Coombs,
Present.
Councilmember Gardner, Councilmember Hancock, Councilmember Drinsky, Councilmember Casal,
Here.
Councilmember Lawson,
Here.
Councilmember Medina,
Here.
Councilmember Murillo, Mayor Pro Tem Sundberg.
Here. There are no mayor's updates. Are there any issue updates? Seeing none, is there any objection to moving the consent calendar, item number 2A through 2H, forward? Seeing none, the consent calendar, item number 2A to 2H will move forward. Item number 3A, Councilmember Jaworski. If not Councilmember Jaworski, then Trevor Vaughn.
Thank you, Trevor Vaughn, Manager of Licensing. This ordinance is sponsored by Councilmember Jaworski to update our cabaret license code. The cabaret license is a license that is an additional right now to liquor licensed businesses that have a dance floor. It's a common type of license that a lot of jurisdictions have to kind of address the higher intensity uses that come around with the late night entertainment uses, particularly when they're connected to alcohol. And the modifications that are being done by this ordinance really have two goals, two separate goals. The first one is creation of an open floor cabaret license for places that have standing room only. So this allows locations that want to have more of a concert venue. That's often very common with concert venues where they only have, they'll have a section that's standing room only. Currently, our cabaret code does not allow for that. And so this creates a modification for that for venues that now could do that, thus making it more attractive for concert type venues. Second, different objective of this is inclusion of event centers that have liquor consumption, but they're not required to have a liquor license. And there's been some issues around those event centers that this ordinance is attempting to address. The open floor cabaret license is going to be available. It's going to be a new class of that cabaret license. It's going to be available for facilities that have more than 250 patrons. That figure comes from the National Fire Code in regards to when crowd control is needed. They're going to need to create a plan that obtains fire department approval for crowd control, so we can make sure that there's reduce any risk of crowd crush or, significant bad incidents that we've seen about in the news and have happened in other places, and try to prevent those from happening here, and make sure that we're having best practices through the National Fire Code. So we'll be looking at those plans and expecting the businesses to follow them. Along with that, adjusting some of the practices that we've seen that have been problematic, including not having glass bottles when they're operating as that standing room only facility. Those glass bottles can become projectiles and have been, so trying to address that. Addressing bottle service and bottle buckets unless the patrons are provided a table to sit. I've seen cases where somebody's not sitting and they'll have this bucket of bottles that'll have 6 bottles in it. It'll be placed on the floor, become a trip hazard. And then also addressing bottle service, which is kind of that VIP service where patrons are provided a full bottle of alcohol, usually with VIP seating, and trying to make sure that that doesn't lead to over service of alcohol, which we've seen in a number of cases. And so adding some requirements around that bottle service, if it is provided, that it be limited to 750 milliliters and 3 or more patrons, and having adequate staff there to monitor that. And then also adding a requirement for all cabarets to have 14 days video surveillance, and turn that over to law enforcement. Event centers, this is the second objective of this ordinance. Event centers that have no liquor license, but where liquor is consumed, and also would have dancing. So we think there's about 10 event centers that would then be required to obtain this license. And it provides more oversight over them. Currently, there's no liquor license, so there's no oversight in that manner. And we have had some issues, which I'll kind of cover here. So we can have bar, nightclub, or worse due to lack of accountability. We do have noise issues oftentimes with these, with some of the neighbors, or issues with overconsumption, violence, and DUIs. And in 2024, we attributed 4 shootings at event centers just in this past year. A number of these have had illegal events, and part of the issue we have is that the event center will rent out to parties, and they'll kind of trust what they've been told, and say, oh yeah, it was a birthday party, but not verify what's going on in there and not really take an active role in what's happening. And really provides an opportunity for some bad actors to just rent that place out for a night without any accountability. So that's what we're looking for here. And then there was that big story about the Colorado Springs Underground Nightclub, and that was an event center, very similar circumstance. It was set up in the day, looked like a wedding venue, but was being used as an underground nightclub. And we've seen similar incidents not only here in Aurora, which was part of those shootings, but also I know it's been an issue around the metro area and actually around the country as well, of making sure to stay on top of those. This is a news story about one this past year where we had a shooting, a homicide, at an event center. And what had happened here is, the person that had been given the keys to the event center to take a share of the income was not really verifying what was happening at it. We were having concert type events there, and kind of an underground nightclub. Similarly, this is another event center over the past year. The advertisement actually doesn't line up with the news story. I couldn't find an advertisement for the event that night, but very similar situation. The place that would have been rented out said it was a birthday party, but it was a concert with security and door charges, and there ended up being a shooting at 2:45 a.m. there. So trying to get that oversight. And there was no video surveillance at this event too, and provided some challenges for law enforcement in solving that issue. This one was a very large issue from a few years ago. This was at Mississippi and Peoria with the 100 rounds that were fired at this event. This was an event center. The event center was actually owned by a church, and had that shooting. And if you look at the flyer for this event, it was scheduled from midnight to 5 a.m. This was just basically a fly-by-night entity that was allowed to then use that facility and run this party. The characters behind that entity weren't probably a very good moral character when we'd taken a look at the background in them. Just highlighting, this was the one in Colorado Springs. Simply, I just notate that because it had received media attention and just kind of a similar circumstance. So as I mentioned, approximately 10 to get licensed, and this would be when alcohol consumption is permitted and dancing is permitted. We'll have an exemption in here if the event is secondary and it already has a liquor permit. So if you have a facility like the Aurora Municipal Center where you obtain either a special event permit or an alcohol beverage festival permit, we still have oversight of that event because it has a permit. So that facility isn't going to have to get this cabaret license. This is just for those full-time event center operations. So it's going to require those private event centers to hire a liquor license caterer, assuming that license gets set up. It needs some more work at the state legislature. It's currently in code, but when they created it last year, it still needed funding and some code cleanup, and we expect that to get taken care of this session. And assuming that caterers get a license, that helps separate now the physical premise control and the alcohol responsibility service, because caterers aren't going to have really knowledge or background in the facility itself, but they can help have responsibility over that alcohol service rather than a cousin or an uncle or somebody just bringing in the alcohol. And us having over service issues. So having that, assuming that when that license gets set up, that's why it's asterisked, or, in the meantime, or as an alternative, these centers having an improved alcohol service plan for late night events, including having somebody that has responsible service training so that it's professional and controlled. And dealing with any deleterious impacts to the neighborhood, noise, and other things, very similar. Those are requirements of liquor license businesses, that they don't impact the neighbors. And this would be then extending that to the event center operator, having the event center operators be good moral character, much like a liquor licensee, and monitoring those events with the liquor code. With that, that's the end of my presentation.
Questions for staff?
Mayor
I'm sorry, who's that?
Bergen.
Oh, Councilmember Bergen.
Hey, Trevor, it sounds good. What are the consequences, for, impacts to the neighborhood or, not having the liquor license, any of these, issues? What would be the consequence?
Well, this would now add a consequence where, first of all, they'd need to have a license. And then if they didn't follow those rules of the license, they could lose that license and lose that ability to operate that event center, or, basically says these things you're doing is a privilege now. So if you have those impacts, we can take it away.
Okay, but they would only lose a future license. Are there not any consequences for impacts that would happen? Like, do they not get cited for anything besides just
Well,
losing the license?
Yeah, are you talking about
Trevor-
current or future? Sorry to clarify.
No, if they don't operate by the rules, you said they could lose their liquor license, but my question is, are there any citations that could be issued for other violations, not just losing your liquor license?
Sure,
Yes.
there could be noise code violations, if that's what's happening there. I think,
Good luck with that one.
yeah, you're right. It's a little bit difficult. One thing with the liquor code currently is it talks about conduct of the establishment. And that's basically what we're talking about applying to these event centers that don't have a liquor license.
But if they
So this
trash the area,
Mhm.
again, are we gonna have to clean it up or?
This ordinance would then require those event centers to be good neighbors.
I know, but like, if they don't abide by this and people just get crazy and there's bottles outside the event
Mhm.
center and it's trash all over, the city's not gonna be having to clean it up, right? Or,
Trevor, can I jump
Yeah.
in? Mayor, can I jump in, please?
Sorry.
Please do.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I originally brought this forward. Trevor and I were looking into some issues that had been going on at the Stampede, and we wanted to see how we could craft this to be a better partner with one of our bigger event venues. But then also we kind of started down this road of all of these illegal events that are taking place in the city. And, bar and restaurant owners, the liquor licenses that we hold, and there's various different types, hotel and restaurant, beer and wine only, cabaret. There's all kinds of different liquor licenses, even separate from what a liquor store holds. And we're held to the highest standards. Someone can walk in completely wasted in a liquor store, be in and out in 20 seconds. And, it's very hard to catch a liquor store for over serving somebody. Whereas, like I said, in the bar and restaurant business, we are held to extremely, extremely high standards. These event centers and the events that they're holding, a lot of them are in shopping centers. I have one in one of the shopping centers that I am in. And what happens is I don't think that the city has ever been held responsible for cleaning it up, because what happens is it's called CAM, so it's called Common Area Maintenance, which is an additional charge that is put onto a commercial lease. So the area is going to get cleaned up, but then what happens is it gets put on the rest of the tenants. And so what Trevor is saying by this will force them to be better neighbors. Right, like that cleanup of that event center, if these people trash it and trash the parking lot and it's just a disaster everywhere, the property management company is going to get it cleaned up. But then that cost is going to be split amongst all tenants in that shopping center. So that's what Trevor's kind of talking about, forcing them to be better neighbors. But the events that these folks are holding, they're holding them all hours, they're holding them, and there's just no accountability right now. And I think what's going to happen too is, we can't go back. Trevor's done a good job of keeping an eye on these event centers and tracking where we've had shootings and even murders, unfortunately, but we can't go back. But these folks that own these event centers, now they're going to be forced to apply for a liquor license. And my guess, Trevor, I don't know, but my guess is some of them are shady business owners and they may not even meet the criteria to obtain a liquor license. You know, you have to go through a background check. You have to go through a criminal background check. Like Trevor and I spoke about in the last public safety meeting, you have to hold a certain moral high ground to be able to hold a liquor license. So I think some of these event center owners, they may not even qualify I mean, we don't know, that I could be
Right.
prejudging. But some of them could be shady business folks and they may be denied a liquor license, in which case they won't even be able to really do business anymore. But it's going to force them to come into compliance with all of the licenses, the food licensing, the liquor licensing, a business license, every license, it's going to force them to come into compliance, just like a bar or restaurant.
Thank you. That's a really good explanation. So I appreciate it.
Okay, you're welcome. Sorry for jumping in, Trevor.
That's okay. Great. Thank you.
Further questions or comments?
Mayor, Trevor, could you please summarize from your previous slide what the approved alcohol service plan is?
So the alcohol service plan leaves it a little bit open there to provide some flexibility, but mainly what it'll require is that they have a responsible vendor, somebody's had responsible vendor training to serve that alcohol. And so how are they going to control that alcohol to make sure it's not overserved? And so sometimes we leave that a little bit open because there may be some options in there where that bar, you know, they could say, well, you know, we're some of the steps we're taking is we're not going to have hard liquor, or if we have hard liquor, we're going to have, you know, the responsible vendor training there. So providing them, you know, trying to provide some flexibility to the business to provide some assurance that they're going to police themselves.
And that would, they would not need a liquor license, or they still would with that?
Yeah, to clarify, actually, the cabaret license isn't technically a liquor license. It's like an add-on to the liquor license. But the requirements are very similar to a liquor license. And so the event centers wouldn't actually have a liquor license. They'd be required to get this cabaret license. But the way we structured the cabaret license is with the same requirements that a liquor license has in regards to being a good neighbor and having the good moral character.
So, Mayor.
Yeah, please, Councilmember Jaworski.
So one thing that this will do is like, you know, this will end people renting out these event spaces and the event center owners saying, well, here's the keys, have a great day, and they just take off. This will put the onus on them. This will put the responsibility on them. They will have to have, you know, a trained bartender. They will be under the same rules as you know, bars and restaurants with checking IDs and over service and stuff like that. So it will force these business owners to be a little bit more involved. And with that, to your point, Councilmember Bergen, if an owner, if a business owner, or if they're to have a manager or something, if this forces them to have someone on site, I think we will see a lot less of this violence and this crime and these shootings and the trashing of these spaces out into the parking lot as well.
And a follow-up to my question, Trevor, if you don't mind, is there a set closing time then, or is it still open-ended?
So there is, so with the cabaret license, entertainment must end at 2 a.m. on those.
Okay, makes sense. Thanks.
Further questions or comments? Seeing Councilmember Coombs.
Yeah, so just to Councilmember Bergen's point regarding enforcement, kind of following on with that, what would trigger a question about good moral character for someone holding a license? Like, how do we even make sure that existing businesses are compliant?
Yeah, so good moral character is a little bit of an interpretation, but there is case law and there is some state law around what that means. And so what the case law has determined is it's around the nature of business itself. So for example, somebody who has a DUI isn't necessarily disqualified, and this was the actual case law. Somebody who has a DUI isn't necessarily disqualified from holding a liquor license. You have to relate it back to the business. And also part of that state law requires that you provide them an opportunity to demonstrate rehabilitation. So if they've had a felony, in the past, it was a number of years ago, they can explain, and show history as to why they're no longer disqualified, or perhaps why that felony may have not even related to the nature of business. So usually it's called crimes of moral turpitude, time frame, and rehabilitation matters in that. Just want to make sure that the city attorney didn't want to jump in on that
Trevor,
in case they had anything else. Okay.
Mayor, can I jump in?
Please.
Trevor, just to expand on that, it's not just criminal history that goes along with getting a liquor license. You cannot apply for a liquor license until you can provide a copy of a lease or the purchase of a property. So, to be able to provide a lease, you go through kind of a scrutinous process there. You are also background checked there. You can also be denied for crimes there. You have to show good financial standing at that point. So you do have to provide a lease or ownership of a property to obtain a liquor license. And then you also have to provide financials to apply for a liquor license. You have to physically show the bank account where your money is going to come out of to start your business, and who you owe money to, and it is a pretty scrutinous process to apply for a liquor license. So if there are truly bad actors, there are several steps in the process of applying for a liquor license that would weed people out.
Further questions or comments?
Thank you. Yeah, my question was more about if there were incidents or problems that occurred, then how do we, what is that enforcement mechanism? If there's an issue that occurs after they get the license, how are we then following back up? That was more the focus of my question.
So I can answer that too, Mayor.
Please proceed.
So every single year, we have to reapply for our liquor license, and that's with the city and the state. You have to disclose any financial changes. You have to disclose any crimes that you've committed, been convicted of, even charged with. You have to disclose ownership in any other businesses. You pretty much have to disclose everything that's happened in your life the year prior. So if a business had multiple liquor license violations in that past year, if they did commit any crimes, it's searched and researched every single year. This is a license we have to reapply for every year, and it could be denied. So that's how we could enforce it is, when they go to reapply the following year, their liquor license could simply be denied.
Okay, further questions or comments?
Mayor, can I
Mayor.
ask a question, please?
Oh, please proceed, Councilmember Lawson.
Yeah, so my question, Trevor, is, and I'm not saying anything is wrong with this, but what I am a little concerned about is a lot of these event centers are around neighborhoods. And sometimes, although the action is inside, the action comes outside.
Mhm.
Okay, with the noise and all kinds of stuff. And I already get complaints from from people 9 o'clock at night about noise just in their neighborhoods. So how is that enforcement going to be? So for example, they come outside, people, things happen, after clubs and stuff like that. Noise and all of this stuff. So what's the parameter for that in terms of noise and things like that? If they get multiple complaints, then they will never be able to go to that, be able to do this?
Yeah.
Because see, the people that are going to get the complaints is the council members. I can guarantee you. So I understand things happen in the venue and all that, but things happen out in the streets as well. So I'm just trying to figure out, how does that work?
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head, council member. Bringing them into this cabaret requirement gives us more teeth to address exactly that. That is one of the things we're trying to get at with this, is that what we have, that proximity, that conduct, the neighborhood impacts, that's written into our cabaret code, that if your establishment is impacting that neighborhood with undue noise and violence and those types of things because of really what comes down to irresponsible operation of the operation itself. This now brings them into that fold, and not only they can't just say, well, it was the event I rented to. They're going to be responsible for that facility itself.
And
And
Mayor,
the parking area.
Yep.
Okay.
Pete Schulte?
yeah, Trevor, I know at Public Safety a couple of weeks ago, the idea of insurance requirements had come up. I didn't know if it did that. I hadn't. I'm gonna blame me being out last week, but I don't know. Did that get added in, or did you guys decide not to do it?
Yeah, we double check it, but yeah, I worked with Tim to get that added in.
And you can just give an overview of what that insurance does. So I think that kind of applies to a lot of what these questions are talking about.
Yeah, so cabaret licenses will be required to obtain either, I had a discussion with our risk manager, either liquor liability insurance themselves if they're serving, or host liquor liability insurance. We left the amount open in that because that may vary by the size of the establishment, and also so it can also change with inflation, and we'll establish that through what the best practice is as far as the amount. So we did say in that amount as set by the finance director, which is very similar to what we did with some of our other ordinances as well, where we require insurance.
Mayor
Councilmember
Jurenski.
Jurenski.
Yeah, I just want to give Councilmember Lawson some further reassurance and a story that actually happened in Aurora. What this does right now, there's no accountability for these event centers, and that's why I think they get so chaotic. There actually was, now this was before I was on council, but a whole community came together over this bar. And this was actually in Ward 5. This is in Ward 5. And an entire neighborhood, Trevor, there was like 200 people showed up, 200 signatures, like 3/4 of the neighborhood. They had enough. This bar was not being responsible. People were all in the parking lot, making all kinds of noise. They were in the back parking lot. And it basically butts up to a neighborhood. I mean, their back fence, on the other side of that fence is a bunch of homes. And this neighborhood came together. And so with them now having to have a license of some sort, Trevor has the power, the city has the power to put modifications on any liquor license in the city. And so many people came forward from this neighborhood, hundreds came forward about this bar, that Trevor and the city put a stipulation on their liquor license that they have to close at midnight. They cannot stay open until 2 a.m. So this provides that extra protection. If you're getting a lot of complaints about an event center or about something like that, and they're still just being wild and out in the street and this and that. Trevor does have the option, and the city does have the option now that they will be forced to have some sort of license. They can be told, hey, you have to shut down at midnight. No more of this. You're not going till 2 a.m. So that also does provide Trevor another tool to be able to monitor these event centers.
Okay. Further discussions.
Mayor.
Councilmember Bergen.
Yeah, just one last thing, because I have a situation happening in my ward with a home that basically is an event center. They are having large parties. In fact, the last one advertised on social media said it was the after party, and it started at 1 a.m. to whenever. And yet the neighbors have been complaining for months on end. And then this is kind of the last straw. So you're not supposed to have an event center when you're in your own personal residence, right?
No,
And we can't, there's no way to apply any of this to a resident other than just call the police. I guess.
yeah, if this was something that was happening regularly, I mean, yeah, if they're advertising it to the public, it doesn't matter, whether it's in commercial or private residence, if we didn't have any delineation in there, it would still apply. So, I mean, in that case, you wouldn't issue a license to a private residence. So, yeah, I mean, that's a law enforcement issue one way or the other.
Okay.
And then, so I did want to highlight we do have an issue. The version of the ordinance is not the version of the ordinance in the packet with the insurance is not, it's not in there. It's not in the packet. So we'll need to amend that ordinance. Apologize for that.
Further
Or
discussion,
Mayor,
Councilmember Combs.
Mayor, in light of that, can we not have this dual listed if it doesn't have the correct item in the packet?
Sponsor, Councilmember Drinsky.
I don't think that that's necessary.
So
I
if,
mean, I haven't seen the text of the one with the insurance, and I'll let Pete.
yeah, no, I just said, if that's something that you want to include, then we'll have to renotice it for the next meeting, or we could pass one that's in the packet and do an amendment on the floor at the second reading, but then I'll have to come back for a third reading. So however you want to do it, if you think the insurance language is important.
Okay. Further discussion? Okay, seeing none, is there any objection to
So-
moving? I'm sorry,
I'm
who's
sorry.
this? Oh, Councilmember Drinsky.
So we're
Uh,
leaving it dual listed, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we can come, as Pete, as city attorney said, we can always amend it on the floor. Right, we're just gonna take an extra
Mayor.
meeting to do so.
Okay.
Councilmember Coombs.
Okay, so I just wanted to clarify, with that being said, there will be 2 readings with the correct language publicly noticed.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any objection to moving 3A forward? Seeing none, 3A will move forward. Item number 3B, non-scheduled psychoactive ingredients and drug paraphernalia implements. Councilmember Coombs.
I will go ahead and let Trevor do the presentation, and then we can have some additional conversation as needed.
Trevor Vaughn.
All right, sorry you're stuck with me. Non-scheduled psychoactive substances and drug paraphernalia. This is related to a lot of things what we're seeing in vape shops and including liquor stores and convenience stores. Really, it's gray market area items, and it's basically the businesses or these entities taking advantage of lack of enforcement or lack of kind of good regulation on them. And so what these items are, psychoactive stuff and drug paraphernalia. These items are in a way illegal or age restricted. So we're just trying to consolidate these codes and regulations so that we can basically handle it all on a single inspection and communication and address this. So codes are dispersed and hard to enforce. And then, when I talk with these operators, they do know, and oftentimes they'll either not answer or state something that's incorrect about the actual use of these items. So this is related to some of the issues we're seeing. I think we've seen around vape stores, but also throughout the country. Why are there so many vape stores? What's going on in regards to community health? There was a study in Los Angeles after communication from the community that tobacco stores, vape stores actually were as correlated to crime as liquor stores. They started to see that there were hangouts of individuals. And that study actually cited the gray market psychoactive items and drug paraphernalia being sold in these outlets. So we see a similar correlation. We're seeing high concentration of these businesses in the poorer areas of town or in areas where there's open air drug markets. And that's not just in Aurora. I've seen that elsewhere. They kind of fuel it. And there's just kind of a lack of community attention. I mean, unless you're actually going into these stores and looking what's there, I don't think a lot of people know exactly what's in them and what's all being sold. So kind of some of the common items we see, and I notate Amanita muscaria, which is it's a legal mushroom, but it's not legal to be added to food ingredients. It contains a psychoactive substance called muscimol. And so it's not psilocybin, which is our regulated mushrooms here in the state, but it's a different psychoactive substance. And not only that, these mushroom products actually, when they're testing them, they're finding them having other chemical elements in them that are, oftentimes synthetic and derived to be psychoactive. The manufacturers of these are very hard to trace and track down, and they should be, they're illegal nationwide. There's a really good article from last summer in the LA Times that talks about all the stuff that they were finding in these mushroom products. I've seen a huge increase in nitrous oxide products in stores. Used to be just the little whippets, but now we're seeing large canisters of it. Mad honey is another substance I'll talk about. Synthetic cannabinoids, which is something the city previously banned, but in the general offense section. Kratom, which is legal, but we just address it in coordination with state law, something called poppers. And we're still seeing hemp-derived THC products, basically marijuana, that is coming from out of state, but it's derived from hemp, but has all the same, effects and is psychoactive, just like marijuana, because hemp is cannabis. And so you can actually derive marijuana products from cannabis. See drug paraphernalia when we go into these. The top thing there is what's an oil burner, which is used for smoking meth. Seeing what we call crack kits with the Rosina tubes, and the chore boys used as filters, little baggies used as for drug distribution, single-use balloons, and sometimes corners of foil used for smoking fentanyl. So an industry that's kind of profiting off of it. This picture was actually taken in Aurora from a business that we hadn't visited, but they, basically demonstrates they are fully aware of what those products are used for. And this store, to their credit, was not selling any of those products and had a sign indicating they were not. They didn't want that clientele visiting them. So just put right on there, no bubbles, no roses, no incense burners. This is a different store. These are, I think the first top two rows there are all of those oil burners used for meth. Really a lot of product here. And this was in an area that had a lot of open drug use where we saw this. Getting into kratom. This does not ban kratom. All we're going to do is adopt the new state law that was recently signed. So we can address these products as well. This is considered an addicting substance. You see a lot of it around town. Colorado has it being required to sell to 21 and older only. However, they didn't assign any agency to verify that or do compliance checks. Nor did they assign any particular agency to go to retail and check and make sure that the products are in compliance with the new state law. So they can't have products now under the new state law. They cannot have products that appeal to children or adulterated. They're limited to 2% 7-hydroxy, no vapes, and have compliant labeling. And so this is something that we can kind of address all at once. The Amanita muscaria products and the other mushroom products, I would, I think there's more to this. Mushroom's legal. However, these products are pretty sketchy and have some other stuff in them. And some of these products, they've also been found to kind of mislabel the other way, where they have nothing in them, but they're trying to trick the consumer that they have something in them when they're tested. So we've got a pretty close relationship with the food inspector at CDPHE that handles this. Unfortunately, CDPHE is very limited on resources, and they have no authority at retail, as they say. So they deal with this at the distributors, which has some impact, but we do still see stuff come from out of state. And I think the vape stores and some of these outlets know that if they get it shipped in, they can dodge that. And so this is a shelf of a lot of those mushroom products. No regulation on that, no prevention, and as far as it ending up in the hands of kids when they're selling it that way. Nitrous oxide, these are the large tanks. We're seeing a lot of them with flavored, strawberry flavored, nitrous oxide now, these tanks. It's really just exploded. There's no regulation in Colorado on this. A lot of states have started taking this up. And I think you're going to hear about it more, given how much I've seen this grow in Colorado. This particular picture, actually, this was not a vape store in Aurora, but I use this for a reason in part for the next slide, but you can see the balloons up in the upper left-hand corner. They're selling single-use balloons. They try to say this is for whipped cream. I pull it out in the vape store and I say, what's this? And they always say, well, that's for whipped cream chargers. And I don't see any milk or sugar or anything else there. So they, a lot of them will claim that. I did finally have one clerk admit that they were, people would inhale that. These are the size of those tanks and kind of in marketing. You can see my hand underneath that. That's 5.5 liters. So you can see the size of what that is there. It does say do not refill, not for medical use, do not inhale. These are dangerous. These will kill parts of people's brains and cause paralysis and death, and have been found to do so. So there is an FDA warning on these products in the packet here, not to use them. However, they're being basically sold as, like we said, for whipped cream, but clearly sold in the context for consumption. The reason I included that picture of that prior vape store, this was not far from that vape store. And here you can see a bunch of nitrous oxide containers in an area known for homeless encampments that I ran across. I took this picture after having been at that vape store and found that interesting. Mad honey is another substance that we're seeing. It's basically bees gathering honey from poppy plants, and so there's FDA warnings on this, and we have seen some of this product out there as well, and it is psychoactive and not FDA approved. Synthetic cannabinoids, I notated this. The city had addressed this previously in outlets, so I haven't seen that as much. Tianeptine, there's been some news stories on this, particularly recently. The FDA put out another warning on this. So they're trying to sell it as drug, and not as a drug, but as not as a food ingredient. They're trying to get around the FDA regulations, and the FDA has put out warnings about this stuff as being dangerous and highly addictive. There was some local news coverage of this as well. So we addressed that in there as well. High THC hemp products. This was a product I found a couple weeks ago in a vape store. They're advertising a large amount of THC, that D8, D9 in there. Delta 9 is considered the psychoactive ingredient. It's Delta 9 in marijuana. Delta 8 is closely related and also psychoactive. This is prohibited under state law. So we want to make sure we address this as well. And I've actually been in communication with another state on this particular manufacturer. They're very interested in that, given that we saw this product. Poppers, this is alkyl nitrate. I found out about this when I was looking at a nitrous oxide ban out of Louisiana, the state of Louisiana. They'd also addressed these, and these are inhaling things. They're sold as tape cleaners, but really they're for inhalation, and the FDA warns about that not being safe. So these regulations deal with items that are not generally regarded as safe. So basically banned by the FDA, but there's lack of enforcement there. FDA, CD, PHE has no enforcement at retail. You know about the nitrous oxide, and these manufacturers basically they go back to PO boxes and stuff. They're kind of hard to trace down because they know a lot of their products aren't good. So we try to limit it there. We did create a rulemaking process in this ordinance to try to keep up with this, because there seems to always be something new or something that they've added or came up with chemically, and then try to limit that authority very much to say, just items that are psychoactive, that are not generally regarded as safe, that do not have some other legal framework around them, and are at a propensity for abuse, and try to limit what we're going to look at there. A lot of states have focused in on these things. I see news stories on all of these products, but it's kind of mixed, and I don't know that anybody's kind of taken a real hard look holistically at what's all in the stores at one time and gone, that's kind of an issue, other than maybe in California, and trying to address those rather than piece by piece. So consolidating those regulations to Chapter 26 allows us to kind of do an efficient inspection process, catch up on them, allows the products to be seized if they're going to be selling them. We're going to try to do an education campaign to say, hey, look, tell your distributors or whatever, this stuff's not okay, get it out of there, because we know that some of the distributors have been selling it and selling some of this stuff, and it's not okay. And then not interfering with any of those other legal frameworks. That's that.
Questions of staff?
Mayor?
Councilmember Bergen.
Yeah, I'm glad we're doing this. Obviously, I'm on M&F and it came to that committee. I had some questions on the Craton. I'm fine with the way it's written currently. With the SB 25072 adopting the new state law. So my only question is, you said there was no state agency to regulate the Craton. So is that left to us?
So it's no state agency clearly defined at retail. What's happened is instead of what I would have recommended, which be the Division of Liquor and Tobacco Enforcement, handling that because they have field staff and they're out in the field. They've now the AG's office is going to take it on. And from what I understand from how the AG's office kind of works is they don't have necessarily field staff out there, and they're probably going to attack it more at the manufacturer and distributor level. So it kind of leaves that open area. And I think more concerning is they have that 21-year-old plus requirement, but because they haven't assigned it to liquor and tobacco enforcement, sorry. They're not doing compliance checks to make sure retailers aren't selling to that. As far as I know, unless there's some locals doing that, it's not happening at the state level.
So you said the manufacturing is not really regulated either on any of these products that.
Manufacturing is, yeah, they do go after the manufacturers if they can find them, and distributors. So part of that is this will be a partnership, which we've already done somewhat with some success with the state to say, here's the products we're seeing, and then, try to figure out where they came from. So that they can go and deal with that. I do know that the state, CDPHE doesn't have enforcement at retail, but I do know they've gone to the distributors and thrown out a lot of product when they find it at the distributors, and do try to chase them down at the manufacturers, even if they're out of state.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of mind-boggling that people even do these things and destroy their brains. So that's just unfortunate that people do use these substances, but I'm happy that we're bringing this forward.
Further questions or comments? Seeing
Mayor.
none, Councilmember Coombs.
So yeah, I just wanted to kind of add, and I know Councilmember Gardner has also been supportive of these ordinances as they're written. This ordinance as it's written these are safety issues, health issues for substances that are intoxicants that are legal in our state. There's a pretty high amount of regulation on the manufacturer, the businesses, and everything else. And so when there are these unregulated products, it's dangerous. You don't know what's in them. The people who are consuming them don't know what's in them. And so I think it's our responsibility to address those issues. So I would ask my colleagues for your support.
Further discussion? Seeing none, is there any objection to moving item number 3B forward? Seeing no objection, item number 3B will move forward. Item number 3C, vape and smoke shop moratorium. Councilmember Coombs.
So I will hand this off to Trevor in a moment as well, but from my perspective, we have an issue of just not having clear enough regulations in place in our zoning codes about spacing, location, and things of that nature. So we could have, a block or a strip mall that's all vape and tobacco shops. And so we want to make sure that that's not what's going on, that we're not having certain areas that are overburdened. So I'll go ahead and pass it off to Trevor for additional information.
Yeah, thank you. I don't have a PowerPoint on this one, but to add on to that, part of the driving force of this, there's a couple things. We did have a vape store, and actually it's kind of another one in an area up off East Colfax where you had a lot of concentration. And I know some of you have maybe heard from a concerned community member when that opened, and they were selling some of the things that we had seen, and just that a lot of concentration in there. This would be a temporary moratorium for not to exceed 6 months, basically to provide us time to look at some options for, regarding any regulations that council might be interested in. That would include potential zoning options. Also, if there was any interest in additional tobacco retailer oversight, regulation, licensing, which could also include resources around kratom compliance checks and some of these other areas. Just as a thought there, that's another thing you could look at, but maybe providing some time rather than, having them open in the meantime. A couple other things that I didn't highlight in my presentation that we have seen with vape stores, in addition to, their correlation to crime and, I think poorer communities is where they locate. But one of the things that we've also seen is some EBT fraud or SNAP benefits, food benefits from the federal government. I have seen vape stores in a couple occasions where they are misrecording their sales as groceries. And I believe that's related to EBT fraud. There was an article on the Daily Wire about this occurring rather substantially nationally between liquor stores and vape stores. And I think we see that as well. We see some of these vape stores advertising EBT and particularly some of the ones on East Colfax, both on the Denver side and Aurora side. So they, targeting the lower income communities is just something to address. And I think we've also seen evidence that there's a lot of smuggling of product from out of state to avoid the state tobacco taxes. So just a couple other considerations there.
Okay. I just want to say, Councilmember Jurenski is going to be working on a proposal, in fact, with you, Trevor, that will be fairly comprehensive in terms of looking at a concentration of these things that would involve liquor stores and a bunch of other areas, and coming up with some type of policy that they're not concentrated, particularly in lower income areas. So I just wanted to make the council aware of that. Further comments or questions?
Mayor? So, Trevor, I
Councilmember
think this,
Wilson.
thank you, Mayor. I think this is a good ordinance. I do want to say, though, that they're not just concentrated on East Colfax. I have one right up the street. Do you guys, so I hope that, what are you guys doing about it now? Are you guys going to look in those right now, or this is just something new?
Yeah, so right now, assuming the non-scheduled psychoactive ordinance that council gives that approval, we would go ahead and start enforcing that.
Okay.
Right now, there's no limitation in regards to spacing on these outlets. They're allowed to open where they are. We don't have local tobacco licensing. It's just at the state level. And as a result, we don't have resources or necessarily clear authority in regards to sales to minors. And that's one of the things that retailer licensing does. So not necessarily a whole lot. I am trying to try to get at some of these issues in them. What I was kind of running into was, when I go in to deal with drug paraphernalia, for example, that's a general offense provision. Well, I need law enforcement to write that. So if we find that and they decide, or they put it back in there, we kind of got to go through a lengthier process to get the police involved to address it. So that, at least we can kind of deal with it a little bit more holistically on that effect. But I think you're right, Councilmember. In some other areas of part of town, I can point to specific areas where we have seen kind of concentration of vape or drug paraphernalia outlets, and they do seem to overlap with areas of crime.
Okay, well, point being is that, this is not just an issue in all of just economically, what we say economically challenged. It's all over the city. So I'm hoping that, we look at that from a ground level perspective, because I have them in my ward for sure. So.
Mayor Gardner.
Councilmember Gardner.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate what Councilmember Coombs and Medina are trying to do here, and but I'm not supportive of a moratorium. It sounds like we're going to start enforcing, the prior ordinance that we just heard once it becomes effective. But there are legal vape shops. It's a product that adults consume legally. And, I don't want to start going down the road of banning certain types of businesses, if even for a short time, when there could be people, we say we're a pro-business city, there could be people in our city that could be making their living off of this type of business. And so, it sounds like there's some other ordinances that are being worked on to kind of address some of this. And, certainly we have what we just heard before this, but I'm not supportive of a moratorium.
Further questions or comments?
Mayor.
Councilmember Drinsky, then Councilmember Bergen.
Thank you. Since you alluded to it, I guess I will speak about what Trevor and I are working on. And this is sort of expanding off of, getting these event centers under control. And Councilmember Lawson, I'm always droning on and on to you about Ward 5 and the businesses in Ward 5. I'm seeing it everywhere. And what I have noticed is, once these vape shops move in, these check cashing places move in, we get overwhelmed with liquor stores. It just has continued to make it harder and harder to lease space to other people. So I don't know if it's just becoming landlords are becoming so desperate that they're happy to line 3 vape shops up right next to each other. In one shopping center that I'm in, I have 2 vape shops. I have, anywho. So I'm seeing this firsthand. And so that's why, whether or not we agree to have this moratorium or not, I am working with Trevor fairly quickly to bring this forward. And we did have the conversation, do we start this in just the Colfax corridor? I told Trevor, absolutely not. We need to be ahead of this, because if we start this in one part of Aurora, they will quickly scramble to other parts. They already are in other parts. I've had all kinds of issues with one vape shop in one of my shopping centers. The other vape shop is great, but I'm seeing a lot of this firsthand. There's some shady stuff going on with these check cashing places. Some of these are predatory businesses, and so I am bringing this forward as a citywide ordinance, not leaving any ward out, and a lot of it is based on my own perception of what I am seeing firsthand, and watching a lot of other really good businesses go out. So I don't know if that affects anybody's opinion either way about having a moratorium, but I am working with Trevor to bring this forward as quickly as possible. And what it'll be is like certain spacing requirements, for these types of businesses, which we already do have in place for some types of businesses in Aurora, but this just expands that to other businesses, so that we don't end up with 2-3 vape shops in the same shopping center with check cashing places and liquor stores and pawn shops and all the things that I deal with, and the whole city is dealing with. It's not just the Colfax corridor. So like I said, that's just my 2 cents. It's coming forward very soon. I don't know if that changes anybody's mind either way about this moratorium, but this is being worked on diligently.
Mayor?
Well, just one quick question there, I think Councilmember Bergen, and that is this written for a straight 6 months, or is it, for me, I just assume I want to see what Councilmember Drinsky's policy looks like. Can anybody answer that question?
Yeah, Trevor, do you have it pulled up in front of you? Do you want me to pull it up?
Hans, do you have the answer to that real fast?
Second here.
And it's just a rough draft, Mayor.
Well, not your policy. I mean, I want to wait. I think that in a way this is premature. I want to see what your policy looks like.
I see. Okay.
But when you, and so,
Okay.
I think your policy might very well address the issue.
Okay.
And so how is this?
Mayor, I'm asking to see if
Councilmember-
Hans
yeah.
can jump on real quick since he drafted it.
Yeah, and it is just a very rough draft. This is the first draft that we put out. Trevor and I have had one conversation since. I told him he was being a little too nice on some of the spacing requirements. I think that we should have this coming forward on an agenda in July. So, but if you guys have the rough draft handy to pull up.
No, I
I
don't,
don't-
City Attorney, or Hans,
Yeah,
for
Hans, if
this
you can jump
proposal-
on and answer that question about if it's just a straight 6 months.
Mayor, thank you for the opportunity. This is Hans from the City Attorney's Office. The ordinance is written up to 6 months. So if there is something that, for example, can be completed in 3 months, that ordinance that will change things, we'll go ahead and repeal this moratorium, or we can just let it expire naturally. But it is up to 6 months, but it could be less than that.
And so Hans, if nothing happens, it'll expire at the end of 6 months. No further
That is
action.
correct. That's
Okay.
correct. Naturally, it will expire in 6 months.
Mayor,
I've been reading.
Sorry, Councilmember Bergen, was already,
So
please.
at first I was for the moratorium, and then I was gonna be like, no, let's wait till we see Councilmember Jurenski's ordinance. But if it's written for up to, and it can be reduced based on what Councilmember Jurenski's bringing forward, then I think I would be in favor of it. How would that work if we wanted to end the moratorium earlier than 6 months? How does that work?
Mayor, I wanted to offer a friendly amendment to Councilmember Coombs's.
Oh, well, let me, let it get an answer to Councilmember Bergen, and then we'll go to you.
Yeah, Hans, go and answer how that works if this passes, how that would happen to end it sooner than 6 months.
Yeah, how could it end sooner?
Okay, so there is two ways this could happen, right? You could have the ordinance die naturally, right? If you, for example, create something within, let's say, 5 months, 5 months and a half, right? By the time this plan goes into effect, it will be already, the 6 months, and it will die naturally. Say that, we get into this very quickly, and by next month, we already have a plan. Well,
Yeah.
we present an ordinance, it takes about, I would say, 90 days to get into effect. That ordinance could contain a subsection that says ordinance, that created the moratorium is hereby repealed. Right?
Okay,
Because it hasn't been the 6 months yet. But likely
okay.
what will happen here is that while we work on this, it will take about a couple months. By the time we present it, it goes through the council process. It will become effective after that moratorium is already expired.
So
Okay,
it would
so-
take legislative action. Yeah, it would take legislative action to end it sooner than 6 months.
But it's all we need then.
Can I finish, please?
Okay, Councilmember Bergen.
Everybody's jumping in. Okay, so it can end earlier based on what comes forward with Councilmember Jurenski. If hers comes forward very quickly, what I'm hearing is that her ordinance would just have a provision that says that this moratorium is hereby repealed.
Right,
Got it.
That's-
okay. Councilmember Jurenski.
I was just going to offer that friendly amendment to Councilmember Coombs to pass her moratorium today with a friendly amendment that when my ordinance comes forward, if we pass my ordinance, it automatically ends hers right there.
Okay.
That's what I was going to offer.
Councilmember Coombs.
Mayor. So in my conversations with Trevor, I think we discussed more than just spacing as potential policies that could be brought forward. So I would rather leave it more general and not as automatically repealed by one policy, because we might identify some other solutions that would be helpful. So that's my only kind of heartburn, I guess, about putting in that it automatically gets repealed after one ordinance is if we identify other things that need to be worked on in that time, then we're not, as far as zoning or other things, then we've said, oh, well, but in the interim, while we're trying to pass these other policies, people can build as many and open as many of these things as they want, knowing that other policies are coming forward. They can do other stuff that doesn't fall under those policies.
Okay.
So that would be my concern about
Okay.
putting in that caveat.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem, but let me just say first before Mayor Pro Tem, and that is in Councilmember Jurenski's proposal, she could have language that repeals upon passage of her proposal that repeals the moratorium. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you.
I'm picking up on Councilmember Gardner's point about the pro-business aspect of this thing, but when we look back upon the previous ordinance that we just gave a thumbs up to move forward, 3B, non-scheduled psychoactive ingredients and drug paraphernalia, that's going to help this situation, isn't it? If we did nothing here, we're doing something already with these existing vape shops that are going to operate in a more healthy, responsible manner, right? Therefore, it might put some of those vape shops that are relying upon these illegitimate substances out of business and could rectify the number of vape shops out there. Councilmember Gardner does bring up the point that there are legitimate vape shops out there. So, I mean, we could start with 3B, see how it goes for 6 months. And then what is the formula? What formula say, okay, who's going to say, no, you can't have a vape shop here. No, you can't have a, I'm curious about the formulaic aspect of dictating where there can or cannot be certain types of businesses or shops.
The
And
policy is not, yeah, okay. The policy is not written yet.
Mayor,
Councilmember Drensky
can
will
I
introduce
answer?
that. Councilmember Coombs.
Mayor, can I respond? Yeah,
Councilmember
so, right, that's the point of having a moratorium, is to be able to talk through those items and be able to work through the policies. So this isn't a comprehensive policy to address every problem. It's a tool that we can have to help us have some time as safeguards so that people who may be bad actors are not taking advantage of the fact that we don't currently have the policy in place to get in under the wire while we're trying to pass those other policies. So that's the purpose of a moratorium, in my opinion.
Further questions or comments?
Mayor Gardner.
Councilmember Gardner.
Yeah, and it may be neither here nor there at this point because it sounds like there's not going to be a friendly amendment on this ordinance, but a question for the city attorney's office. I don't understand procedurally how a repeal of this could be put into this ordinance for some unknown future ordinance. Wouldn't that repeal have to be put in that future ordinance to repeal this one?
Councilmember Gardner, that is correct. So basically what it would work, correct. So if this thing is to pass and we have up to 6 months, if Councilmember Durinsky's policy comes forward and everybody's happy with it, they want to repeal this ordinance, they would both go into the repeal and the new policy that would be in Councilmember Durinsky's ordinance would go into effect at the same time. So they could start reissuing business permits under the new policy at the time this is repealed. I just think with the timing, and again, just how everything goes, I mean, reality is you're probably looking at 5 months, 6 months of a moratorium if this passes.
Councilmember Bergen.
Yes, so what we're trying to do, I guess, is come up with policy to make sure that, you know, we don't have the high concentration of these all in certain communities, just wherever in whatever ward. We already have this in effect with our marijuana retail establishments. And when that was done years ago, it was 4 marijuana retail stores per ward. So we've already gone down this road before, so that you don't have 10 vape shops, you know, down one street. And I think, you know, I'm not trying to be anti-business, but we have the right to you know, from a land use perspective, to say how many we want wherever, so that our city doesn't end up looking trashy. Just use that word.
Thank you. Further questions?
May I ask a question of clarification?
Mayor Pro Tem.
I know some international markets that operate almost as vape shops. Does this include them too?
Yeah, the definition is 15% or more floor space. So I know some of the ones you're talking about, and I think some of them would be caught up in this, and that's what I included in my numbers, given what I kind of see in these. You know, maybe not. So, you know, and it's a moratorium, so it'd be new ones coming in. So it'd be like, you know, if we see something we think may be within that realm, we'd reach out to them and say, hey, you know, what's going to be your floor space for this stuff, and maybe reduce that so you're in compliance with the ordinance in the meantime.
Further questions or comments?
Mayor,
Councilmember Bergen.
So I just want to clarify that having a moratorium on licensing of new establishments falling under these definitions does not close current businesses. We are not out here closing current businesses. We're just saying from what we currently have in place, we want to take some time and examine other rules we might want to have around spacing, zoning, and other considerations.
Further questions or comments? Seeing, Councilmember
Mayor,
Hancock.
my question is, do we know how many of these businesses we have in our city right now? What's the total number? Because I haven't heard that number.
My estimation is 57.
And that's spread
I-
all across the city? Or
Correct.
is there a concentration more in one area than the other, or are they just equally dispersed? Because I'm thinking about what Councilmember Bergen said about the limitations that we have on marijuana establishments throughout the city is, I mean, the businesses are already there, so there's not too much we can do about that. But if we're looking at trying to balance out the number of businesses of this type in the city, how are we going to manage that?
Yeah,
And would this
and that,
ordinance do that? I mean, would the ordinance and or the moratorium help to facilitate that?
the moratorium helps facilitate that. One of the things we need to do is get a good handle on that. It's a little bit tricky. I mean, we can pull up a map, but it's going to show concentrations in commercial areas. I do know, just from observations of the city, there are specific spots of concentration. When you look at East Colfax, there, Mississippi and Peoria, there's like a stretch of them there. There's kind of little spots of them around town. So trying to identify that. A couple other relevant factors. I think there is another risk factor out there with Denver's flavor ban, potentially increasing the numbers you see along particularly along the Denver side, potentially increasing there. We have about approximately 350 total tobacco retailers in the city. But, of that number, it's, looking at vape stores, either through titles or what we know of the stores, I would put us around 57 total there.
Further questions or comments, Councilmember Gordon?
Trevor, how many liquor stores do we have in Aurora? Is it more or less than 57?
87.
So it's more. Okay, thanks.
And Mayor, just real quick, if I can.
Yes.
Hey, Trevor, can you just explain the practical application of the ordinance? Like, is this going to start with all new applications? So if people that are already in the application process, they get to continue and finish, or is it just granting? Just kind of give the idea, because I think that question hasn't been answered yet for council.
Yeah, it would be new applications that would come in, assuming when the ordinance gets into effect. So
everybody else
there'd
is
be some time.
It's in the process now would be finishing out under the old rules, and there's anybody new, so it wouldn't be closing down anybody that's going to open tomorrow, right? Because they're already in the process.
That's correct. Yep.
Further questions or comments? Seeing none, is there any objection to moving item number 3C forward? Item number 3C will move forward. Item number 3D, Unified Development Ordinance Amendment for setbacks and easement around plugged oil wells. Jeffrey Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council members. My name is Jeffrey Moore, manager of the Energy and Environment Division for the city. Let me go to presentation mode here, and I'll share a couple of slides with you. Thank you for the opportunity to present on this topic this evening. I think it's an important one for the future of the city, and we've been working on this for quite a while, and pleased to bring it forth to you tonight. As a reminder, plugged wells are wells that have no longer producing. All the surface equipment has been removed. There's been some cement placed into the pipe of the well in the ground, and then it's been covered up. And so there's not much left to see there. We have 68 wells plugged in Aurora currently. We will have hundreds more in the future because one day, decades from now, all the wells that are currently producing will be plugged. About half of the wells that we have been replugged, meaning they were drilled maybe in the 70s or 80s and plugged then, and then plugged again recently since 2020. We do believe that most wells will be replugged in the future. There's several reasons for that. One is to stop leaks. We've not had any leaks from plugged wells in Aurora, but we know offsetting jurisdictions that have had that. To avoid risk, protect our aquifers, and there is a state ECMC rule that requires replugging of certain wells before drilling a new well within 1,500 feet of the old one. What we need when we do a replugging is we need space around that well, because the graphic you see on the screen is a picture of an actual replugging in Aurora. This is the Medsker well down in South Shore back in 2021. We have to put the drilling rig right over that pipe in the ground, and other equipment has to be brought in around the rig to support the operation for safety and to do the job right. And so it's really preserving the space around that plugged well with no physical structures in that space that we're looking for. Surrounding jurisdictions have already had the setback in code: Adams County, Arapahoe County, Weld County, Broomfield. Most of the front range jurisdictions already have this, so it's important that we consider it now. Because these rules and regulations do not apply to the oil and gas operators, they would apply to future surface developers. We have worked extensively with the development community on the specifics. I've got a slide I'll share on the changes we've made in response to their questions and comments. We met with them a year ago this month in person to talk through and hear some of the concerns, and we've got a really good place that we've landed. We've got a three-pronged approach here that we are proposing. The first is what we call the setback area. The setback area applies to the land, obviously to the owner and the developers. The goal of the setback area is to provide that space around the well with no structures inside. We would establish it with a setback in the UDO. The main parameters are the physical size is, if it's a square, it would be 150 feet by 150 feet, or otherwise 22,500 square feet. It's about half an acre in size. No utilities within 25 feet, no buildings within 50 feet, no residences, schools, or hospitals within 100 feet of the plugged well. The benefits there are that space can be used by developers for a number of requirements, as long as if it's in compliance with the pros manual. It can be used for parks, open space. We have wells under parking lots, and all of that is perfectly fine. The second prong is the easement. Now, this would be a limited easement to the city staff, be granted by the property owner, granted to the city. The easement is simply for the city staff to go and do a non-invasive soil test on an annual basis to make sure that there's no leaks that are occurring, that everything is in good shape with that well. There would be established by an assigned easement document. That'd be very similar to an navigation easement. That document, the easement would be recorded at the county level, and that would provide some notification if properties change from one owner to another. The main parameters are it's permanent, runs with the land, and it applies only to the surface. Benefits there, of course, as I said, city staff could access that space without further approval. And then finally, the replugging authority. This would apply to the operators or a licensed rig contractor with the state. The goal would be to repair a well or bring it up to modern standards if needed. Two things would be needed for that before replugging. One is a permit through the state for downhole work, and then an agreement with the surface owner. Key parameter is it does require the operator to reclaim the surface back to the original condition. And the benefits, of course, is it protects people and the environment by repairing leaking wells or preventing pollution. I mentioned that we've worked with the development community. This is a chart that kind of shows some of our original ideas and what we proposed in the past and the changes that we've made in response specifically to developer comments. On authority, originally the city had authority for most of the decisions. That authority is now shared between the city, the landowner, and the state. The size was originally 200 by 200, which is about an acre. We've reduced that to half an acre, so we've gone down by 50% there. The method originally, all of the parameters and the setback were in an easement document. We've split that out to the three-pronged approach that I just presented. We still require the developer to locate a well. The reason for that is they need to survey it and they need to put it on their site plan. So we still require them to physically locate it. There's lots of ways to do that. The well condition, originally we were asking the developers to determine the condition of the well and to actually do the replugging themselves or through a contractor if needed. We've changed that to say the city and the state will work to determine the condition. If there's a need for replugging, generally speaking, the state through the Energy and Carbon Management Commission would replug the well as an orphan well through their expense in their program. Above ground utilities, we've reduced that from a 50-foot setback to 25-foot. Below ground utilities, still at 25 feet, but there's an option for the city engineer to approve a variance for a closer distance. Access to the site is still 24 feet wide. That's driven by Aurora Fire Rescue and their need for that width for accessing. Existing structures are exempted. So any building that's already constructed, if this ordinance passes, would be exempted. And then finally, the residential setback is still 100 feet, but we did add schools and hospitals to that list at the suggestion of the development community. Let me give you a little visual example here. So what you're seeing on the screen is an aerial photograph. That is that HOA park there in South Shore, where the rig picture was just a few minutes ago. The yellow star in the middle is where the plugged well is. And if there were a setback area there of 150 by 150, that's what the red outline would show. So let me zoom in on that area and I'll show you how the other setbacks apply. So the red square there, that's essentially where the equipment will be sited to do the work. In addition to that, we have the 25-foot radius setback from the well, a 50-foot building setback from the well, and then the 100-foot residence, school, hospital setback. The reason we have the circles in addition to the square is the square does not necessarily have to be centered on the well itself. The well could be more towards the corner, or it could be a rectangle, for example, not a square. And so in those cases, we do still want to maintain certain distances from the well itself with no buildings. How can the setback area be used? If this is a rural area, it can continue to be agricultural or livestock. If it's an urban area, as I've already mentioned, and if it's in compliance with the pros manual, it can be a park, it can be an open space. That HOA park where the med school well is, there it is. This is the way it looks after it was reclaimed and returned to its original condition after the replugging. We've also approved plugged wells in the past over parking lots and detention ponds over a plugged well. So a lot of different ways that the land can be used. We've gone to the Development Review Advisory Board in April and the Oil and Gas Advisory Committee. Both groups approved. We went to PED in May, Planning and Zoning Commission this month. And we're here this evening. And if it passes, then we would propose to move it forward to City Council at the next meeting in July. Thank you for your time. Happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions of staff? Seeing,
Mayor? Mayor?
sorry.
I'm sorry, Mayor,
Oh,
I just have
Councilmember
a
Hancock.
question. I
Councilmember
just have
Hancock.
one question. So when you restore these back to their original composition, does anyone know that there was a well there and how, I know I don't know anything about oil and gas appropriation, but tell me how people would know that it was ever there. And is that a concern or does anybody care?
I think in general, most people are not aware that the wells are there because they are buried. Generally, that pipe is cut off 5 feet below the ground surface. And so there's no evidence at the surface that there is a well there at the depth. There are state records through the ECMC that indicate where those wells are. Our division maintains a database of where those wells are and a map as well. And so they're there. If this passes and if the easements move forward, then those easements would be recorded when they are granted to the city. And that would be some additional evidence if you were purchasing a property, for example, that you could see that there was an easement on the property for the plugged well and note the location. We will also require them to be put onto site plans in the future as well. So any new developer moving forward would need to locate the well and survey it and have it accurately placed on a site plan.
You answered my question. That's what I was trying to figure out, if for future development or anything like that, if someone would be able to know, and that you have it 5 feet deep, that's also a safety concern. So thank you. You answered my question. Thank you.
Further questions or comments?
Mayor?
Councilmember Coombs.
Yes, so in addition to kind of that, Jeffrey, if someone is purchasing a home in the like in a development or in the vicinity of those properties, that would also be included in their documents as they're purchasing the home. Is that correct?
Thank you, Councilmember Coombs. If they were purchasing a property where the well was actually on their property itself, they would see that in the easement or on the site plan, for the neighborhood. if it's not on their particular parcel that they're purchasing, they may not see that if it's on some other property in the neighborhood.
Further questions or comments? Seeing none, is there any objection to moving 3D forward? Seeing no objection, item number 3D will move forward. Item number 3E, amendment to the city code to add a local amendment to the motor traffic code pertaining to offensive eluding. APD Commander Matt Bruckbacher.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Commander Matt Bruckbacher, Special Operations with the Police Department. This is specific to a law that was just signed by the governor that empowers municipalities to take over enforcement of registration violations. That's going to be a huge win for the city. Obviously, we're writing a ton of state tickets for this. And
I think we're doing eluding first.
oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
My apologies. All right, eluding.
I was like, woohoo! And then, yeah.
Jumping to the next one, I apologize. Angela, I saw you looking at me funny. I should have paid attention. So this is specific to bringing the model traffic code in line with state law. So we're seeing a lot of problems with enforcement from our unmarked units that are very well marked with emergency equipment, but are not a black and white with a light bar on top. And we've had issues with municipal court accepting those violations for misdemeanor eluding when it doesn't rise to the level of a felony. So with the support of Mandy McDonald, we've been able to bring that more in parity with state law under the reasonableness standard, which is the best standard out there for enforcement. That's all I have on that.
Okay, thank you. Questions of staff? Seeing none, is there any objection? Councilmember Coombs.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to better understand. So they have to still demonstrate that a person reasonably would know that they're eluding an officer, basically, regardless of the marking on the vehicle. That's essentially what this is requesting.
Absolutely. Model traffic code specifically required a marked police car. And all we're doing is changing to the reasonableness standard that anyone would realize that it's a police car with audible and visual signals.
Further questions or comments?
Mayor?
Councilmember Bergen.
Yeah, so, there's been situations, I think one just recently where it was someone impersonating a police officer that ended up in a tragic situation. So if somebody has lights and is asking you to pull over, you can just call 911 to verify that?
Yes, council member, that's correct. So we still talk about that safety aspect and pulling to a well-lit area and areas like that. And those are mitigating factors. This is truly for people that have very clear intent to evade law enforcement contact.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And Councilmember Bergen, my office is going to look at those, right? If there's these extenuating circumstances like, hey, I called 911 to make sure it was a legitimate cop. We're not going to prosecute that. They may get cited for it, but this is under our city codes. It's a misdemeanor.
Further questions or comments?
Mayor?
Councilmember Coombs.
Yeah, so to the city attorney, how do we ensure at that point that people have the ability to communicate those issues? Like, right, they get cited, they're coming to court. How are we making sure they have the support that they need to convey whatever their situation may be? Like, I'm worried that if folks didn't have their own counsel that they brought with them, and they hadn't had a public defender application hearing, and they're pro se in that instance, like, how are we making sure that their ability to explain their extenuating circumstances is still available to them? Because frankly, we've had a number of scary instances of people impersonating police officers recently. And so I think people have good reason to be afraid of whether or not folks are actually officers that are saying they are.
So a couple of things on that, Councilmember Coombs. One is that if we are, I mean, this is going to be under the general penalty in the city code, so they will be entitled to a public defender if they can't afford one. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I know most people, if I'm using generalities here because I'm a lawyer, but I say all of them would say, hey, I just call 911 to make sure you were legit, and dispatch would say, hey, whatever unit is your violators calling 911 to verify that you're behind them, just confirming it's you. So that'll be on the body cam stuff. So I think there's good enough safeguards in place because they're going to be entitled to court-appointed counsel, the public defender's office, and other things that my office, we're not going to be unreasonable about these. If there are extenuating circumstances, we're definitely going to take those into account.
So sorry, just following up, because at this time, right, someone has to have a hearing to apply for a public defender and then come back again for the hearing on their case if they're asking for a public defender. Is that correct?
I think that's the process, but nothing happens in their underlying criminal case until that process is resolved. So they have they're going to apply for the public defender. And then at that point, again, because the municipal courts are going to make sure that because this is a crime that could result in jail time, they've got to have counsel or they got to waive it, right? And we're not going to allow them to do that in these cases because that's why they get the public defender or another court-appointed counsel from Office of Alternate Defense Counsel. So that all happens on the very front. It's the same stuff that we were doing with domestic violence cases. It'll be the same process.
Sorry, one more kind of follow-up to that is, do we have any idea how many additional cases this might add by changing this standard?
Matt, I would probably defer to you. I don't know how many misdemeanor eluding cases. Eluding is defined as, right, they're not fleeing, so to speak, from the police officer. They're just ignoring the overhead or the lights and siren to stop. So I know they don't happen all that often, but I'm going to turn to the expert, to Matt, and say what he thinks that this might do.
And they are actually fleeing. The way the ordinance written, it says a motor vehicle that driver willfully increases his or her speed or extinguishes his or her lights in an attempt to elude such police officer, or willingly or willfully attempt in any other manner to elude the police officer. So the reason that this came up is specifically to my gang unit, who drive pickup trucks, but they're unmarked, but they have a lot of lights, and a lot of individuals that they try to contact will take off from them and elude. And it may not rise to the level of felony eluding, so we try to charge it in a misdemeanor or in a municipal court. And we've had judges that have read the letter of the law with model traffic code and said, well, I'm sorry, you're not in a marked car, so we can't accept this charge.
So that's what I meant. So sorry, it was
Okay.
like, it doesn't rise to the felony level, right, that they're being pursued, right, by the officer. They're just taking steps to not stop immediately upon seeing the lights and siren of the police vehicle.
Further questions or comments? Seeing none, is there any objection to for 3E to move forward? Seeing no objection, item number 3 will move forward. Item number 3F, amendments to city code to enforce state vehicle registration requirements. APD Commander Matt Brubaker.
I explained most of it, but this is going to empower our officers to charge registration violations into municipal court instead of state court. We're writing a lot of summonses, so that brings that revenue back to the city. That is going to be a really big win for us, and it also gives us a little bit more local control over the enforcement of registration violations, which is a continuing high priority for us.
Councilmember Hancock, thank you for your work on this. Further questions or comments? Seeing none, is there any objection to item number 3F to move forward? Item number 3F will move forward. Item number 3G, Advanced Public Safety Funds Agreement. Emma Knight.
Good afternoon, Council. Can you all hear me okay? I'm on my headphones. Yep, okay,
Yes.
thank you. All right, this agenda item is to provide some additional funding to advance for operating the Aurora Day Resource Center in the interim until we open the navigation campus. This is some additional public safety dollars that were not allocated during our NOFO process and fit quite well into what we would normally use them for in advance. Has been operating the Aurora Day Resource Center as day services and overnight shelter for the past several months. And this is outside of their regular scope from what we had with our operator agreement with them for the navigation campus. So this is to help fund what they are currently doing in regards to homeless services.
Okay.
And any questions?
Questions or comments of staff? Seeing none, is there any objection to move 3G forward? Seeing none, item number 3G will move forward. Item number 7A, public alert and warning systems, Matthew Chapman.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Let me share my screen at a quick presentation. All right. Again, my name is Matt Chapman, assigned as the emergency manager for the city. Tonight's presentation is quite a bit informational, and then we also have, I know council's been briefed on the outdoor warning siren system. Some of the issues we're having with that. So we'll lead with this because we've gotten some questions about what warning systems are we using, what tools are we using for public alert and warning, and this is just a quick overview of that. And then again, we'll get into the siren system. First up, Code Red. I know the City Comms promotes this quite a bit. This is our reverse notification system. We tag it as Alert Aurora on the website. You go to the website, every single page that you navigate to has emergency alerts at the top, right? Sign up for emergency alerts, and this is where you opt into the system. This is, to put it in context, what people would consider a reverse 911. A little bit different though. Everybody can call into 911, everybody text 911. This system is different though. So to get the most out of this, it is an opt-in system that we try to promote and get folks signed up for this to truly get what they need out of this system and get it set up the right way for those folks. Weather notifications are available through this. City staff does not send out a weather notification. It's all automated within that system. So it's tied to National Weather Service. They can, when they opt in, select what weather notifications they would like. The second one is IPAWS, I throw an acronym in, right? So this stands for Integrated Public Alert and Warning System. So the biggest one with this gives us access to really a suite of kind of public alert tools. The biggest one for this is an agreement we have with the federal government and the state government to access the system. And the biggest one would be the wireless emergency alerts. So those are very similar to the Amber Alerts. It's the same technology, same process, where we would be able to push out a message to our residents. That's where we'd probably hit the most amount of people in an alert and warning situation. We do have access to the emergency alert system, the TV, radio, where they interrupt with a message, weather radios, and some other internet-based services, some things like roadside signs, that kind of thing as well. But the biggest one would be the wireless emergency alerts. Social media, another platform we have. I think we hit all of these social media sites between City Comms, police and fire PIOs. We have actually probably more followers on these social media sites than we do in Code Red by quite a bit. And these are also good for advisory notices. A couple of weeks ago, we sent out, hey, weather's going to be bad this afternoon, just a heads up. And everybody have plans for weather in case it turns bad. Also, in real world events, we're using these platforms to update on things that are going on, and also when things have been concluded or under control. So that this conversation around the outdoor warning sirens right now, and this is, I know it's come up in the last few weeks. Really, we're dealing with kind of a system that's end of life for several different reasons in several different areas. This has been in place since at least the early 80s. We have 58 sirens across the city right now. It's an all hazard system. So we say, it could be for all hazards. We need to notify you, need to get your attention. It's primarily used for tornado warnings, however, and I think that's what our public mostly associates it with. There's a map. I don't know if you can see that real well, but that's the current coverage of the city. So you can see where we've expanded, where land and building has expanded in the city is not quite covered by some of the current system. These are some of the jurisdictions that are using it in the Front Range. You can see Brighton is discontinued, Wheat Ridge discontinued. Weld County, it's only certain cities in Weld County. It's not the entire county. So you can see that it's a limited number currently. Again, jurisdiction to jurisdiction, there's no uniformity on how these are activated, or there's a clear and all clear. Some have a voice, some don't, and what type of hazards they're using things for. Our system, this is one of the limitations, it's all or nothing. So it's all 58 sirens in the city or nothing at all. So that creates an issue for us with the city growth, that the threats in the north part of town, which are blue skies in the south, it creates some confusion. One of the other limitations for this also is the delay in time from receiving the National Weather Service warning to activation of the system. This is not automated. So we've always promoted this as make sure this is a secondary notification system for you. This is not a primary because there is a lag in notification between when city staff gets the National Weather Service warning, verifying that that is within the city boundary of Aurora, and then issuing the activating the sirens. So right now, in addition to some of the outdated technology, the end of life in some of the technology, additional sirens are needed to cover the growth of the city. Security concerns around it and the current software that it runs on. Reliability is the biggest part of the conversation tonight of bringing this forward. We have a system that is not completely what I would say reliable in its current state without a lot of repair and some maintenance on it. Here was just some basic numbers that we got from our current vendor that does the maintenance on it. This is what our estimate is of how many new sirens would be needed to cover new growth. And this is some of the technical work that needs to be done on them as well. These are notification alternatives that we always push anytime we talk about this. So this is I have 3 or 4 of these in place of siren activation. Local media, National Weather Service alerts. There's a number of these out there that you can access for notifications. So our recommendation right now, as it stands, and like I said, based a lot on the reliability, the age of the system, that's kind of where we're at with this. Would be to take this for now to take the system offline while we address that, or we decide on the return on investment of the system. You see the cost of it, public safety prioritization of that funding. And this is a number I asked the National Weather Service for. We've actually set the sirens off for a tornado warning 5 times for a real world tornado warning since 2019. With that is all I have. If there are questions.
Questions of staff?
Yes, Mayor.
Councilmember Bergen.
Yeah, I had a lot of, as you know, a lot of complaints from constituents in my ward, primarily because the sirens didn't go off, and I tried to explain that we did not have them activated because there was no tornado that seemed to be heading into Aurora. It was actually heading east, although it was very close to some of the neighborhoods like Blackstone and South Shore, so forth. So just a lot of concerns. And I know you're saying a lot of these sirens are not necessarily reliable and have security concerns that they, I guess, could get hacked, and that it sounds like people should not necessarily rely on them for any kind of emergency. So your recommendation, besides the code red, aren't we looking at some other systems? I just want to assure the public that we're not just saying, just sign up for code red and we're going to do away with the sirens. I hope, and I'm pretty sure I know this from you and from our city manager and our fire chief, that we're actually looking at some other systems. I know I referred Mike Nelson to you guys to look at a system that he's familiar with. So if you could just briefly talk about that, just to assure the public.
Sure, Councilmember, I can talk about that. Yeah, in addition to the systems that Matt talked about that are already in place, whether those are weather radios or other things like that, there are some other applications and services out there that provide better notification, right? As Matt said, the city's actually been consistent that the sirens were never supposed to be folks' primary warning system. It's a very antiquated system. And so there are much better systems out there to give folks much more pinpointed notifications about what's going on and actually give them details about what that notification includes. So yes, we're looking at those systems. That would be part of our plan to kind of wind down the system, if you would, is making sure that we're actually providing better, more targeted notifications for folks with instructions on what they can expect and what they can do to keep themselves safe.
And in the meantime, I'll just add that I have code red, but at night I silence my phone. And so the other night when we had the big storm, I didn't know, I mean, I woke up from the storm, but my phone didn't go off for the code red because I had it on silent mode. So just so people know, that particular system, you need to have your phone on and not silenced.
Further comments or questions? And this is for information only. I don't think there's any action. Or is there action required on this? I'm sorry.
No, I just want to kind of give, make sure council's aware of that. I know we've been having some discussions, and so we'll be back in the future with you all, probably with some of those additional systems that Councilmember Bergen was talking about. And then we'll also start preparing some public messaging around those new systems and about what folks can do to keep themselves safe.
Great. Thank you. Seeing no further business before the Aurora City Council study session, this meeting is adjourned, and we will reconvene at 6 p.m. For the regular meeting.